Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, and welcome to today's tale. We're going back to the Irish creatures, and this one is called the Féar Gorta. And so definitely smash that subscribe button. Sit back, relax, enjoy a horn of mead, and let's delve into this mysterious creature in Irish folklore that really is an interesting creature. It is modern-ish, so it's not ancient, but still a fascinating creature. So let's delve into the Féar Gorta. Now, this creature was born from Ireland's most horrific period, part of the Irish genocide during the Irish potato famine. This was brought about during that period, and it is an allegory of bad luck when various cultures have, in folklore, have had these kind of creatures, but not to this extent. These creatures take on forms of different forms, but share one common purpose: to serve as an omen of misfortune and sometimes even death. For the Irish, the Féar Gorta was seen during the famine a lot, and basically to the poor. It appeared like a zombie-like creature. We'll get into different shapes as we go on. It took the shape of a starving, emaciated person. The Féar Gorta roams the Irish hillside. But this one is a little bit different than the rest of the creatures who wanted to harm. This one begs people for alms. Though it is commonly seen as a precursor to tragedy, a run-in with the Féar Gorta, according to the lore, can actually be a double-edged consequences. Like most things with the Irish, you have that double edge. The Féar Gorta is the personification of hunger itself. What else do we know of it? The Féar Gorta, with its roots in Irish mythology, the Féar Gorta are bodies of neglected corpses, typically poor people, that have risen from their graves. Sound familiar? Can we say what a modern zombie? There's also described to have rotting flesh and held together by patches of decaying skin. However, those similarities between modern zombies and the Féar Gorta end right there. Instead of craving flesh like zombies, the Féar Gorta wanders parts of the countryside, rags tied around its waist, and an alms cup in his hand, seeking help from passers-by. The most basic sense, they are beggars in search of food, money, or handouts. Anything that might extinguish the endless hunger in their stomachs. With that, you can see why it was brought out in the Irish genocide of the potato famine. Moreover, according to the lore, the Féar Gorta are typically depicted as emaciated corpses, flesh falling off their bodies with every move. Surrounding their hollow face are long and matted patches of grey-white hair, while the body reveals their thin arms, matched with their long and dirty nails. They also don rags and clothes, and with all those elements combined, they are the textbook representation of what some people think death looks like. The term Gorta can be translated to man of hunger. In this sense, man is not the biological man, but man as in both male and female, all mankind. Or phantom of hunger, and sometimes even hungry grass, gortach. Hungry grass, although nowadays considered related, is actually a separate entity, according to some. And in this narrative, it is a plot of land covered in grass that is cursed by the fairies of the unseelie court. Stories say that if you step on the hungry grass, you will end up starving to death, no matter how much you eat. A particularly different take on the Gorta story. But with time, the lore of the hungry grass and Gorta gradually became interconnected and difficult to differentiate. Due to this, some accounts describe the Gorta as the undead corpse of a person who passed away and was left on the ground without proper burial. You gotta remember, back in the genocide time, a lot of the poor were tossed in what was known as a pauper's grave. In other words, a big hole in the ground where you just threw the bodies. And not individual, but you had thousands of bodies just tossed. Despite the confusion, though, it appears that it would be best to keep off the hungry grass if you ever see one. Better safe than sorry. Now, here's an interesting question. Are the Gorta good, or are they evil? Meeting with the Gorta is an encounter where elements of both good and evil are at play, although they don't share many similarities with the other more harmful creatures, not harmful, I guess more of the goods, if you say, benevolent. We'll use the word benevolent creatures. When it comes to appearance, some stories tell of the scarring encounter with the Gorta, possibly leading to something favorable. Much like other entities that are known to bring both good, and bad karma, they are regarded as people depending on how they are treated. Good fortune to those who are generous, and rotten luck to those who snub them. Distinctly known to be seeking alms for passers-by, they reward those that are unselfish with luck and prosperity. On the other hand, those who turn away from the needy creature are punished with dreadful curse. Anyone unfortunate enough to receive the curse of the Gorta was said to suffer grave misfortune, and sometimes even leading to famine. Moreover, anyone who tries to attack them, though that theory doesn't sound like the best idea, would meet with a warranted violence from the creature. Now, that is a situation you definitely don't want to be in. Despite their frail and weak appearance, the Gorta can still inflict sizable damage to whoever is aggressively moving towards them. Well, here is the origin, which, we really got to look at the origin and why this came to be. Because like in all Irish creatures and pantheons and their myths, there is a distinct real reason. And this is why. Some people argue that the folklore is an augmentation of history, as well as a belief in supernatural. And I don't disagree with that. History has time and time again proven its influence in shaping the lore and beliefs in most cultures. In Ireland, for instance, the Gorta, as they say, is the perfect metaphor for what people experienced during the Irish potato famine, also known as the Irish genocide. Potatoes were introduced to Ireland in the 18th century, and by the 19th century, it was already a food staple for impoverished families. The reason was its price. Potatoes are cheap and easy to grow, which immensely helped to get people through the harsh Irish winters. In 1845, this is when Ireland's darkest era begins. It was the year that the potato blight, a fungus-like microorganism scientifically named Panthera infernus, spread the infected crops in the Irish countryside and farmlands. This triggered the Irish potato famine. The reason why it's called the Irish genocide is because when you look at the history of it, the government at the time didn't really do enough, and that was the British, unfortunately, didn't do enough to help the people, and sort of said, yeah, whatever. And a lot of people died. And this genocide lasted 7 years. In this period, it brought mass starvation, extreme poverty, and disease to the already poor people that had been long suffering under the British of the time. Corn laws were also still in practice at the time, which placed an artificially high tariff on imports in order to maintain the British control over the market. This, again, is why a lot of people see it as the Irish genocide. As long as it was continued to export of produce managed by the British landowners, the merchants ultimately brought the downfall of the entire Irish nation. Over 2 million immigrated to the northern regions of America and Great Britain, all in an all-or-nothing attempt of survival. Furthermore, the death of another 1 million men, women, and children has been recorded as a result of the famine, malnutrition, and the disease associated with it. So we're looking at 3 to 4 million people died because of this. With such a colossal catastrophe at hand, the remainder of the country was understandably overwhelmed with grief. As a result of the fast-growing mortality rate, accounts say that the bodies of the dead were hauled off in carts and placed on top of one another and eventually turned into massed market graves without proper blessing, much less burial. Remember, at this time, this was very much Christian Ireland, and they really saw that you had to bless the dead after they died, and it was bad if you didn't get blessed. So in this, you're not getting proper blessings, nothing like that. These were known as mass graves. Despite being unconcerned at the time, were even memorialized. So basically now these have been marked. At the time they weren't. However, there are still some of the graves that were inevitably left unmarked and forgotten. The cries of hunger drowned out by several feet of earth above them, with all the horrors brought out by the harrowing famine. There's no question why it gave birth to the striking tale of the Féar Gorta, symbolizing the darkest times of Ireland and serving as an undying reminder to always lend a helping hand to those in need. And what you'll find is the Irish, we are a people that really do like to try and help as much as we can. Of course, unless you want to find yourself face to face with a rotting corpse ready to curse you for misfortune and eternal starvation. In March, I will be going over more of the famine part of it. When you see a Féar Gorta, it is usually always the harbinger of famine, disease, and despair. It is said that he came forth from a battle of fairies which took place over Cormac Hill marked. So make sure when the Féar Gorta comes knocking on your door, you give it some food.